Are we live? Yes, we're live. I'm just staring at the camera and we're already live. I think that's how that went today. Sometimes there's just a little bit of a lag here. How are you doing? Happy summer. Happy Wednesday. I am doing so well. I'm just going to pull this up in the group. Great. Found myself easily. That way I can see all of your comments. We've got a juicy conversation today. I feel like this is one of probably the biggest places I see my clients get confused when it comes to sales, and that is both understanding and navigating sales objections in a way that doesn't just help you get a sale, but keep a sale and sales with right fit clients. So we're going to dive into all of that today. If you are live with me, say hello, drop an emoji, drop a comment. We are doing a giveaway. Today, I believe it's my 6-figure content prompts. However, I realized, I don't know why I didn't do this. We also have my 7-figure sales actions cheat sheet. This is a Google document that I give to my one-on-one clients. So if you win, you can choose between the two. Happy for you to have either one, but I always want to thank you for being here live. It is so much more fun for me when I get to have a conversation with you, but it also means the world to me. I know there's so many places you could be hanging out to get content. And if you're in the vault listening to this, I know that you can't ask me questions and I know that you can't interact with me live, but I also love having you in the vault, and it's so fun for me that we get to have this content living on there in podcast format. Facebook group, if you don't know about this, I will drop a link for this afterwards, but I have a private podcast feed. I obviously love having you in the group and getting to interact with you live, but all of these lives, my team is now turning into a podcast episode mini masterclass that you can access on a private podcast. You do have to sign up for it so that we can give you access to it because it is a private podcast feed. But these drop the following week there for you, so that's also always available to you. All right, let's jump right in because I always want to be like chatty Cathy at the beginning of these. Though I should share this for all of my parents. My stepson graduated middle school on Friday, and we went to his graduation, and we had a beautiful blended family. Big lunch, was like 10 of us, his mom, his bonus dad, me, his real dad, both of his grandparents. I am friends with all of them. We all get along really well. So it was like 10 or 12 of us. His half brother and sister. So big old blended family celebration. It was really lovely. It makes my heart so happy. Not only to see, big deal, the graduation. He's going to be in high school in the fall, which is crazy making to my brain. Also just makes my heart so happy, the blended family we have. And it's just such a beautiful part of my life and something I am really grateful for. Let me take a sip of water because I'm losing my voice, and then we will dive right in. But the reason I said for all my parents, y'all, I just feel for all my parents who are full-time business owners and have their kids at home over the summer, like just seeing you in that. But also the graduation thing is real. I've known my stepson since he was 4. So to see him going into middle school, I know what that's like for me, so I can only imagine for all of you, the different graduations. So just seeing you on all of that. Okay, so let's dive in. So what we're going to dive into today, what we're going to cover is what a sales objection is and isn't, and the reason people ghost and sometimes give objections that aren't true. And I think this is just an important thing to understand, where I see just so many people get confused and either unintentionally push someone in the wrong direction or end up missing out on really great opportunities with people that they could work with who want to work with them. We're going to talk about the unintended consequence of not leaning into navigating objections, what you can become aware of so that you can book more of those great clients who want to pay you. And then I'm going to share a couple of my sales secrets in air quotes. There's no such thing as a secret, but 2 or more depending on how much time we have, that has helped me to have a sales call conversion rate of, it's over 92.3 now because we just had, conversions are increasing, but call it 92, 93% sales conversion rate, and to stay fully booked for the last 5 years with 20 to 25 one-on-one clients. And I share that not to say, ooh, look at me, but to say this is coming from context of very much walking my talk and implementing this myself. And some of what I'm going to share, I think, is maybe the opposite of what, I don't know, I've never actually taken a sales guru's sales course. I don't even actually know what people are teaching, but it's from what I've heard from clients. I think some of what I'm sharing hopefully will be refreshing, but maybe it's a little bit different from that. So I just want to give you some of that context and evidence that this isn't just like shit I made up or something I watched a webinar on. This is what I've been implementing my own business for the last 5.5 years, and it's working for me, it's working for my clients, and I think I have a conversion rate that is pretty much unheard of for one-on-one and high ticket. So, hopefully that will, and there's multiple factors for that. I did a live stream on that. So it's not just because I can navigate objections really well, but just to give you some context, I do know what I'm talking about. I'm quite skilled at sales and quite skilled at supporting clients with sales. So let's start with what is and is not an objection. Feel free to throw in your thoughts if you have thoughts around this, but I think this is probably the place we need to start with this, because what I think more than anything, this gets confused. And I think one of the biggest questions from my clients when I'm supporting them with mastering sales, and I'll see this, I'm pretty sure just this week alone, I've had 3 to 5 people ask me, is this an objection? Is this an objection or not, right? I think we get really confused when we have a sales conversation with someone and it isn't a very clear, yes, I want to work with you. I think anything other than yes feels very confusing, and depending on what you've been taught, and also just depending on your level of comfort around different things and just how you hear things and your mindset, there's lots of factors here. But I think anything other than a yes can either feel like, to your brain, anything that's not a yes is a no, which is definitely not the case. And it's Steve Chandler who says yes lives in the land of no. And I think that's both in terms of you knock on enough doors, right? You get enough no's, you're going to come to a yes. Sometimes, yes, we want to have a high conversion rate, but sometimes it's just about knocking on enough doors. Sometimes I'll challenge my clients, go get 10 no's, because if you go get 10 no's, it's kind of impossible that you're not going to at least get one yes. And for many of us, myself included, I have a great conversion rate, but for me to have a great conversion rate, I have to be willing to go out there and get rejected and to collect as many no's as possible, because that's where the yes lives. But also, just because someone doesn't say an immediate yes, that also does not mean that they are a no and that they don't want what you have to offer. So I think for some of us, right, if it's not a yes, our brain just hears they don't want this, they're a no, right? We just start making a decision for someone else. And so I would say the first thing here to really check in with yourself and to look at is, are you deciding, right? Are you deciding for a potential client what they want or what's true for them? This could almost open up a whole nother conversation, but I think there's also this element of, or are you having an objection for your potential client? One of my clients and I were just talking about this. I think I did a live stream on this a couple of years ago. I don't know that I'll remember which one it was, but if I think of it, I'll link to it. But I think so often what can happen is we have our own fears, insecurities, right? And so we have our own objections around why someone shouldn't invest in our offer that we will then project onto someone else. Or, if we have our own insecurities, we have our own thoughts, right? We will just decide or assume for someone else. And what is it that I think this is such, I'm talking about my stepson going into high school. I feel like this is such high school language, but what do they say about the word assume? To assume makes an ass out of you and me. I think we just have to remember, in sales, your job is not to be a mind reader. I tease one of my clients all the time. I'm like, so we just became a mind reader. Your job is not to be a mind reader in a sales conversation. Your job, it's called a discovery call for a reason, right? It's to discover, it's a discovery process. So just because someone doesn't say yes immediately, right, does not mean that they're a no. However, the pendulum swings on this, and I think this is where it gets confused. We hear something like this, and I think some of the teachings online, goodness, I'm not sick anymore that I know of. I think this must be allergies. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. My throat doesn't hurt, but it's a little scratchy there. We're going to get through this, though, because I want you to hear this. What was I saying? So I think the pendulum can sometimes swing in our space as well. And so we hear, right, yes lives in the land of no. We hear if it's not a yes, or if it's not an immediate yes, right, that doesn't mean that it's a no. And I think then what the teachings can do, or what can happen, is we swing all the way the other way. And it's like, well, that means anything someone says, if it's not a yes, means it might be a yes and it's an objection, right? And I think this is where things get really, really sticky. And I think this is when sales get a bad rap, and when people think sales are slimy or gross or manipulative or pushy. I personally think there is nothing, when you're approaching sales in a really clear, service-driven way. I've probably said this 8,000 times in the past 8 years, but the way I see sales is very simply a process in which we are helping someone get clear on what it is they want, and then make a clear decision to move towards what it is they want. Do they want this thing? Yes. How do we help them to make that yes? Do they not want this thing? Great. How do we help them to get clear and to move away from it, right? It is the goal in a sales conversation is to help someone get clear and to help someone make a decision. That's it, right? The goal of a sales conversation is not to get someone to buy, to get someone to pay us money. Of course, that's our sales goal in business, right? When we have sales goals. But if we actually think about from a service-driven place, and if we want to work with clients who are the right fit, in my opinion, in my perspective, and again, I have great sales conversions, we make great money, like this gets to work for you. That's the way I see sales. But I think then this can be confusing because it's like, wait a second, they didn't say yes, so that means they must not be clear, so that must mean then if they have anything else they're saying must be an objection, and I got to figure out how to overcome this objection. I personally I shouldn't say hate, that's very strong. I'm not a big fan of the language overcoming an objection, because to me that feels very much like we are trying to convince and manipulate, as opposed to what I think we want to get clear on is this someone who just doesn't know how to tell you no, right? They maybe don't have great communication skills. Maybe they're not clear this is a no. Maybe they just don't want to hurt your feelings. Or is this someone who wants what you have and has some resistance and needs some support making that decision because they are a human and because they have some normal fears, insecurities, worries, things, hurdles coming up, right? Those are two very different things. So when I think of a sales objection, I know there's a lot of context, but I think it's important for us to understand like where the pendulum can swing. When I think of a sales objection, very simply, a sales objection is when someone wants what it is you have to offer. They're like, yes, I want that. Yes, that is the fit. Yes, that is the thing. If this objection did not exist, I would want that thing, right? So it's when someone wants what we're selling, they simply have a hurdle that is preventing them from saying yes, taking action, and getting that thing, moving it towards what they want. For all of my coaches, this is no different than anything we support clients with, right? We have to help them first get clear on what it is they want, right? What's their goal? And then we reverse engineer it, and then whatever is preventing them from reaching that goal, right? That's really their objection, right? Like that's their resistance, that's their hurdle, that's their in air quotes block. Those are the things they have to overcome, and we support them to so now I'm using the word overcome because it's so ingrained, because it's so in our space. We help them to navigate those hurdles, those bumps in the road, so they can get to where they want to go. But the first thing we always have to do as coaches is get clear on what they actually want, and not decide for them what they want, or not assume what they want, because otherwise, right, we're going to help them do all of this stuff, and it's like, if you don't want the thing, it doesn't effing matter. So again, sales objection is when someone wants what it is you're offering, but there's something preventing them from making that clear decision and taking action to move towards it. If someone doesn't want what you have, or not like what you have, but if they don't want your offer, that is not a sales objection. That is a no that someone does not feel either clear on, right? We need to help them get clear on that and to articulate it, or they don't feel equipped to make that clear decision, to draw that line in the sand, to communicate what they do or don't want. So I really understand that difference, right? If they don't want the offer, if it's not the right fit, if it doesn't solve the problem for them, if it's something they're just not that interested in. What is it that I've used this example before, the movie He's Just Not That Into You, right? If someone's just not texting you a whole bunch after a date, like it's so easy for us to think like, well, it's because their phone doesn't work, or because they're playing hard to get, or because, or it could just be that they're just not that into you, right? Like we have to understand it. We have to check in with, is someone just not that into our offer, or are they really into the offer but they have an objection? So hopefully those two differences make sense. An objection, again, is when someone actually wants what you have to offer, but there's something coming up that's preventing them from moving forward. I hope that makes sense. That will change everything for you, because what we don't want to do is, if someone is actually a no, and we're like, I'm going to go navigate their objection and talk to them about their fear of investing, or tell them about why they should invest in my offer, or like try to work through this block that's coming up for them. Think about how crappy that feels on the other side, right? Like if we're dating and we're just not that into someone, but they're like, no, you're actually into me and you're just scared of a relationship. You're just scared of commitment. Let me tell you why I'm so great, right? I mean, on the other side, you're sort of like, I mean, no, like that's not the thing. It's just, I'm not that into you. Could you please hear and respect where I'm at? Maybe not the best analogy in the world, but I think that's a little bit of what we're talking about here. However, right, there are so often at every ticket, right, this is not just for high ticket offers, at every ticket price it is just so normal for all of us as humans to have resistance, to have fear, especially if we're investing in something that's either going to be a big stretch for us financially or ask us to take action or show up in some way, right? To ask us to be responsible for the outcome or results in some way, or to ask us to step out of our comfort zone, which many of you, your offers are checking one of those boxes. It is, I always have my lip gloss next to my desk, and I always use this as an example. There's like not a ton of objections that come up for, like if I want to buy lip gloss, right, and this is the lip gloss I want to buy, it just tends to be like, do I like this lip gloss? Do I like this color? Does it have the ingredients, that I'm okay with? And is the price point within my kind of like value set in terms of what I'm willing to pay and like feel okay energetically to exchange for a lip gloss? If so, great, I'll buy it. If not, then I'm a no. If I have an objection, like there might be some objections, but those are pretty easy to overcome because they're more on helping me understand if I want this or not on actually like getting me to like overcome the hurdle. Maybe it could be I'm super busy and they need to follow up with me to remind me to put it in cart, close the cart out. But there's just not a lot of ton of objections because the ticket price for this isn't so high, but it also doesn't take a lot from me to be able to use this and get a benefit or a result, right? Like I'm not worried where I'm like, oh my gosh, am I gonna suck at putting on lip gloss? Or like, what if I buy this lip gloss and I don't use it? Or like, gosh, am I gonna be the only person in the world who buys this lip gloss and like doesn't know how to put it on, right? Like that's just not a concern I have with this. But for many of us, if we're selling coaching, if we're selling done for you I think is a little bit less here, but for a lot of you who have done with you offers and services, we have to remember that it's not just does someone want your offer, but there's often also the objection and the hurdle for someone to come up with not just the investment, but do I trust myself to show up for this offer? Do I believe I'm someone who can get a result from this offer? Do I feel wanted here? Do I think this is a place that I'm going to show up and thrive and grow? Right? Like there's ownership on both sides here, and oftentimes that creates an objection to navigate. And I think that's a very, very, very normal thing for all of us. I would find it very interesting. Y'all prove me wrong, but I would love for everyone watching now on the replay in the vault, I would love for you to think about, just go over your investing and buying experiences, just to think, can you think of any example? Can you think of one, like any example, how can I phrase this? Is there anyone who has never had a sales objection around investing ever in their life? I'm pretty sure all of us, no matter how like well-resourced we are, or how much we trust ourselves or believe in ourselves, my guess is all of us at some point have had an objection around something, right? Maybe it's on our business, maybe it's on the health and fitness side of things, maybe it's on the relationship side of things. I bet all of us have had an objection at some point because it's pretty freaking normal and human when we're being asked to put some skin in the game, when we're being asked to invest at a high level, when we're being asked to step outside our comfort zone, when we're being asked to show up and do work, when we're being asked to play the long game and not get immediate gratification and results. Okay, that's another difference with this lip gloss or not. I can get immediate results and gratification from this. For a lot of our offers, that's not the case. So I think just what can be really helpful here is first understand, is this a yes or a no? Is this a no or a sales objection? But then also for us to have a little empathy for what it means for someone to have a sales objection, because I think sometimes on the business owner side, we can just so badly want a sale that we can almost get frustrated at objections, as opposed to seeing like, this is just so normal, like this is just so human. And the reframe I often remind clients is, this means someone wants what it is you're selling and offering, and then our job is to support them through that. But the piece I remind my clients, and this is the piece I will remind you, and then I'll go to the other parts of this live stream, is your job though is not to convince someone to get to yes, and your job is not to make someone take the action to move towards what it is they want, right? None of us, like not that, like the most incredible therapist or coach in the world can't make someone do something that they don't want to do or they're not ready to do, which is I think also just helpful for us to remember that we can't really, convince someone into our offer. But we can support someone. So I always say to clients, and I always think myself, I just always want to know that I have done my job, and that I have done my job to have a conversation, to lean into, to find out what's going on with an objection, right? To get clear on if it's an objection or not, but that to really support someone with that, to support someone with whatever that hurdle to see if I can support them to jump over that hurdle, to move around it, right, to navigate it, to be able to make a clear decision and to move towards what they want. But I have to remember, I can't do that for them. It is not my job. My job is to show up to be of support and then to leave it up to the person in front of me. And I think that's also a big part of how you end up with clients who are the right fit. The last thing I ever want in my coaching containers, and I've told people this before, right? I'd rather someone tell me no, right? Like, I wouldn't think it's a fit than me feeling like I have just now like twisted someone who doesn't actually feel ready for this, or it's just going to blow out their nervous system. They're not going to feel ready, like, into being in this container. So I think that's just maybe something helpful to remember with objections. I'm just seeing here, y'all are very quiet, but if you have questions now or on the replay, let me know. All right. Let me pull up the next part here, because otherwise I will go off on tangents, because I feel like I have so many things to say here. This was the last note I wanted to say on this part. I think maybe I said this already. If someone is a no, right, that the only time this is going to be a pushy conversation is if someone is a no and we're not listening to that, or, and that was the part I was going to talk about, was ghosting, or if someone doesn't have the communication skills or didn't want to hurt your feelings and is basically giving you what sounds like an objection but is actually a no. And I think this is when we end up with people ghosting or feeling like we're pulling teeth in a sales conversation. So, right, this is the one piece I wanted to make sure I remembered here. Because I said, this is why sometimes people ghost you. And it's like, how do we minimize people ghosting in the sales conversation? Look, people ghost oftentimes because they don't have the communication skills to say what they need to say. Or, and I'm not saying ghosting is okay. I think, we've all been ghosted. You will get ghosted in business if you have not been ghosted yet. I've been ghosted. Everyone's been ghosted. People also ghost and come back around and hire you. So that also happens. Look, none of us, we all know, it's not the cool thing to do, but sometimes when you feel backed into a corner, sometimes when you feel like you've had a conversation with someone who won't listen to you or won't hear you or won't respect your decision, if you don't have the communication skills, right, there's lots of reasons for this, but if you don't want to have a confrontation and it feels like the sales conversation feels very confrontational, or you are going to get pushed or manipulated into a decision, or you're worried about that, or you don't feel particularly safe being really direct, these are all reasons someone might ghost you. And that's not an objection. That's probably someone who was a no, or is in deep fear, right? Who doesn't have the communication skills. And I think that's really helpful, because I think otherwise it's tough for us to understand on the other side. Similarly, and I think this is just a piece to get clear on, if someone doesn't have great communication skills, if someone's scared of confrontation, if someone has a lot of people pleasing, insert the reasons for this. Sometimes you will hear something in a sales conversation that isn't a yes and isn't a no, and it sounds like what we typically think of as a sales objection. I can't afford it. I'm too busy. My partner says X, Y, and Z, or I have to check in with my husband. I have to check in with my wife. Right, these are all things we traditionally think of as sales objections. And this is where I want to invite you to do your job to check in with, is this a sales objection, or is this a polite no, or a no from someone who just doesn't know how to tell you no? Because I'm pretty sure all of us, maybe before we had the communication skills we did, or because we want to spare someone's feelings, or because we don't want to get hassled, or insert the reason, or because we want to get off the phone or want to get off a conversation, has used one of these essentially excuses to try to get out of having to just tell someone directly, I don't want what it is you're offering. This isn't for me. This isn't right for me. And so I think it's our job as service providers to get really clear on. And the way you get clear on this is you simply ask. I was telling this to one of my clients this week. And she's like, how do you know? I was like, you just ask. Don't put that pressure on yourself to be a mind reader, especially with someone who's not being clear and direct. Right? Don't put that pressure on yourself to be expected to just automatically know these things. I think the longer you have sales conversations, the more you start to pick these things up, and the more you'll probably feel confident to say, hey, wait a second, you're saying this, but I'm wondering if you really mean this. Or you'll notice someone shift in body language or tone, and you'll pay attention to those things. But if you're not sure, just give yourself permission to ask. You can simply ask someone, hey, I want to check in. I know you're saying that you can't afford this, and I'm curious, does this really feel like you can't afford this and you don't have the finances for this? Or if you did have the finances for this, is this something you would want to invest in? Or does this maybe feel like, even if you had the finances for this, this wouldn't be the right fit? Or if you had all the finances in the world, if you did have the resources for this, does this offer feel like it would be the right solution to the problem you're wanting to solve, or the right solution for X, Y, and Z, whatever the thing is they're saying they want help with. Just give yourself permission to ask. It can be that simple. Because one of the things I always think about is if I'm having a sales conversation, to the best of my ability, to the best someone will let me in and communicate with me, right? We can't control someone else's ability to communicate, but we can control our ability to communicate and our ability to be direct and clear and to make a clear ask in the sales conversation and to ask clear questions, right? That is something you can control. We can't control what someone does with that. So I'm always wanting to make sure, like, am I being clear and direct in my offer? Am I clearly and directly asking someone, what next step feels best for them, or having those sales conversations? And am I doing my job to the best of my ability to get clear before I get off a phone? If someone's either a clear yes, a clear no, or if they have an objection, what that objection is. That's something I just always want to know. And if I don't know, I want to ask. Okay, I hope that makes sense, but that's so often when that's happening, right? If what I find for clients is when we unpack this a little bit, a lot of times I find when we're getting that unclear communication, well, this will happen for everyone, but when this is happening a lot, oftentimes there's an area we're not being clear and direct in our communication, right? If we're confused, or if we're like trying to tiptoe around the offer because we don't want to like put someone out or make them feel bad, or we're like worried how they're going to feel when we make the offer, people pick up on that. And so of course, then they're going to probably give us something that isn't super clear as a response. They're probably not even super clear on their offer, right? They're picking up on our uncertainty, but that also is going to oftentimes leave quite a bit of confusion in terms of like, wait, where do we go from here? So yes, you can ask all of these things, but I would also check in if you're finding this is happening repetitively. Check in with yourself and say, like, if I'm being really honest, am I being clear when I make an offer? Am I clearly describing this? Am I clearly asking someone the next step they want to take? Am I being direct, or am I being also like, I don't even want to say confident, like you need to buy this, but I think when we're confident in our offer and when we're confident in our business, and we have, I call it like lean in and lean back energy, where it's like we're leaning into the conversation, but we're also lean back where it's like, I'm here to see what's the right fit for you, not like I'm trying to get you to pay me money and make a sale. I think people pick up on that energetically, and it feels much safer than to tell someone, yes, I want this, no, I don't want this, right? When we're talking to someone and it feels like they're insecure, or like they're having a hard time, or like they don't even know what their offer is and they don't want to hurt our feelings, right? I think sometimes that can also make even the most clear and direct of us want to be mindful not to hurt someone's feelings, especially if we're empathetic. And I think that's when we can sometimes get the things where like, well, I'll come back to you, maybe later, maybe now is not the right time, as opposed to like, no, this isn't for me. And so just check in with yourself. If you're finding this is happening a lot, check in with how clear and direct you're being, and then also, are you making those asks? I'm just seeing here. And this is the other piece I was going to say for y'all, because I think this is maybe helpful to hear as well. Because I know then if there is an objection, right? If you're being clear, direct, you're making those asks and there is an objection, I know for so many of my clients, the fear is if I have a conversation, if I lean into this objection to navigate it, that's going to be pushy, that's me convincing, that's me not respecting someone, that's not me not listening to them. And what I always like to go back to is, but what's the difference between an objection and a no? If someone says no and we lean in and push there, yeah, that's pushy, right? To me, that's kind of like, can you please respect what I'm saying? We all get those people who fucking cold DM us or email us where we were never interested in their offer to begin with. We tell them we're not interested, and then they come back to handle and navigate our objection, and it's like, hello, like what the fuck? Like that is harassment. That is a big no, right? Like nothing will get my hackles up more than that. That is very different than if we think about, we talked about at the beginning of this live stream, what is an objection in the first place? An objection is from someone who wants what it is you have to offer, but has some questions or some resistance or some hurdles, right? Like there's something that's preventing them from making that clear decision, but they want what it is you have to offer. In my perspective, you're welcome to disagree, but to me, then if someone wants what I have to offer, as opposed to someone never said they wanted what I have to offer, then they tell me they don't want what I have to offer, and I treat that like an objection. I try to tell them why they should want what I have to offer, how they're going to be like a horrible business owner, if not, right? Like that's just gross. But if someone's like, I raise my hand to be sold to, I'm telling you I want what you have, but insert reason, I can't do it right now. To me, then that's very different, and that is quite of service then to open up the conversation to see, well, let's get really clear on is what you're saying a real reason you can't have this, or is there a way you can have what you're saying you want? To me, that feels very, very clean and of service. But the way we stay out of pushy, manipulative, gross sales is doing our job as a service provider to get really clear on, is this a no or is this an objection, right? To rewind the tape even before that and to make those clear, direct offers, right? The more clear we are in our communication, the easier it is going to be to receive that. And just to keep asking questions and to check in. And then something I'm always mindful of is also just listen and pay attention to the human in front of you. You will know, you will see, like, all of us are pretty intuitive, smart human beings. Even if you don't consider yourself human, if you're in this group, you're empathetic, you have a high EQ, you will know when someone goes from being open and shutting the fuck down and like putting their wall up and their hackles up. You will know when you've gone too far because you will see it in someone's body or in the way they're talking to you. Like, you will literally sense and feel that. And that's where I just want to pause and check in. Like, is this conversation still feel good for you to have? Or do you want to, maybe we should, put this to the side for the table. Like, maybe, let's revisit this conversation. I'm noticing that maybe you're shutting down or this is feeling like a little too much. So just trust yourself to pay attention to and listen to those sorts of things. And you never have to worry about being, pushy, manipulative, gross, all of those things. You might find from time to time you step over the line too much, just like all of us have retreated too much, right? And you have to kind of calibrate because that's part of the learning process. But that's a really easy thing to navigate and be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, check in with the person in front of you and just have a human conversation. But if you're paying attention to those cues, I really think you can trust yourself to have these conversations. Which leads me to the next part here. So I want to make sure I cover this before we end our live stream. And I also am getting a little warm. I'm hoping this shirt is not too boobalicious. Let's see here, but it's getting a little warm, so you'll have to deal with me. If it is boobalicious, I will put the shirt back on. I think we're okay. Where was I? This is telling me to close my applications. So let's just close a couple applications here. Close. Okay, we're having a little background interference. Okay, so the next piece, this is what this is leading me to that I wanted to bring to you, because what I have found is there are unintended consequences of not leaning into navigating sales objections, and I think we just really want to be aware of these. And first and foremost, I think, look, if we're not navigating objections and we know an objection is actually coming up from someone who's saying they at least think they want what it is you're offering, right? Like they're not a no. We're missing out on sales. We're missing out on, and look, for some of you that means money. But for some of you who maybe aren't as driven by money and are much more driven by service and by impact, that means you're missing out on people you could serve and support. And I often think about this in terms of, I use my gym as an example all the time. I think it's just such a good example. I joined a really nice gym, I guess about 2 years ago. They opened up across the street. And I had some objections. And had they not supported me through those objections, look, I don't know that I would know any different. Like, my life wouldn't have changed dramatically because I have a gym in the building. But now that I'm on the other side of that investment, investing in that gym has been one of, aside from like coaching in my business, like maybe team, has been one of the best investments I've made in my life that has exponentially like increased my, like improved my health, improved my well-being, improved my mindset. It has given me community. It's given me new friends, right? And all of these things. And I think, gosh, if the person who was selling to me hadn't navigated my objections in the most beautiful, non-pressury way, because it was something I wanted, right? Like, or something I thought I wanted. I mean, it wasn't a full yes, otherwise I would have done it, but it was something I thought I wanted. I had some objections, like, why do I want to spend this money? Yes, I have the money, but why do I want to spend this money when there's a perfectly good gym in my building? Like, I had investments, like, question marks like that. I can be a snob, but I'm like, I don't know if the gym's pretty enough for me. It actually ended up being quite pretty, or well designed, I should say, aesthetically pleasing. I'm affected by my surroundings. But had they not supported me through that, I just think on like how much I would have missed out on. And so that's something I always think about as a service provider, right? If you're not driven by the sales and the money, I think about how how much someone can miss out on if that's something that could really impact positively their life or help them solve a problem. If we're just not willing to get over ourselves and the discomfort of maybe having an uncomfortable conversation with someone or sitting with someone else in their discomfort or hearing a direct no, right? If that's our fear and that's why we're not having those conversations, I just always want to think about like, but kind of what am I robbing someone of on the other side? And the other thing I think about so much is, because I've been on the receiving side of this, when someone has a sales objection and it's a true objection, not a no, right? That's like a polite no, but it's a true sales objection, and we're not willing to lean in and navigate that with someone, oftentimes we are unintentionally co-signing someone's story and telling them, yep, you're right. And look, with the gym example, if they had said, you're right, you don't need this gym, you can use the one in your building, look, that wouldn't have been super damaging. But let's just say my objection had been something more along the lines like, I don't know if I'll fit in at this gym. Like, I don't know, like, if people will like me in the classes. I don't know if I could actually get into shape. And if they didn't navigate those objections with me, let's just say those were my objections, essentially what they would just be saying by not saying it, by not leaning to the conversation is, you're right, you probably won't fit in here. You're right. You probably won't actually be able to get in the shape you want to. You're right. No one will actually like you here. And look, none of us would ever consciously do that. I know if you're in this group, you're like a bleeding heart like me. I know we're also empathetic, but I think we don't realize how sometimes not saying something is also speaking volumes. And I think about this as a coach all of the time. I am not perfect, but my vow to myself and my clients is, to the best of my ability, I'm always going to speak to what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, because I know if I have a thought and I just keep it to myself because I don't want to hurt a client's feelings, or because I don't want to be transparent, or because I don't want us to be uncomfortable, whatever the thing is, how detrimental that can be, and that it's my job just to speak to the thing. It's the same thing with an objection. I just always think about how detrimental it could be if we don't at least have a conversation around what's coming up for someone, because we can unintentionally co-sign that. And the reason this always comes up for me, I still remember, so I've been in business 8 years, but I've been coaching 10. I took a coach training program. I've shared this story before, but I think it's worth repeating. I took a coach training program, 10 years ago for a year. And at the end of the year-long coach training program, the coach had an ongoing mastermind sisterhood type of a thing. She was a great coach, she's great. This isn't a knock on her. But I was invited into this year-long mastermind thing afterwards. And when I got the invitation, I looked through it and I thought I wanted to join it. And I think if I was honest at the time, I was probably scared that I hadn't started my business yet. I wasn't sure if I was going to start a business. I probably thought I didn't belong. I've got a lot of stuff about being in groups and not being liked, right? I probably had some fears about fitting in and being good enough, and if I was going to start a business or not, right? Those are probably my real objections. But I don't want to say, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to fit in, right? I'm that's we never say the actual thing. And so I think my objection, or what I said, was essentially around it was this whole sob story, probably around my finances and working a job and being in New York City and barely making enough money, et cetera, et cetera. What I was really saying in that email in response to this woman, look, it's not her fault. I'm not mad at her. She didn't do anything wrong. It's not her fault that, she didn't know this or didn't have the coaching skills or the sales skills. But I'm using this as an example, so I'm not putting blame here at all, but just using this as an example for how we can unintentionally co-sign a story. What I was essentially saying in my sob story was, I really want this. Can you tell me I'm wanted here? Can you tell me I'm allowed to have this? Can you tell me that, ask me what's really going on and make me feel wanted, make me feel like you want me here? Because I know one of my other fears was, I thought she was, so above me and so big, and that, I wasn't cool enough to be in this program. I basically just wanted to hear I was wanted and it was okay for me to do this and people weren't going to hate me. But I didn't know how to ask for that. And so what happened was I just never got a response at all, right? Nothing. No reply at all to that email. And I ended up feeling, again, not this person's fault, but just so we can understand what happens when we don't lean into an objection. So not her fault, no one's fault if you've ever done this before, but unintentionally, because this is a beautiful quote, and who knows the reasons there, right? Not her fault. It's always, our own responsibility, all of that. But what ended up happening is I very much felt I thank God I didn't invest in that, because she did just want it. she did just see me as a number. She did just want me to, pay that amount. She didn't really care if I was in this program or not. She didn't really want to support me through this. Like, I probably wouldn't have been like, she doesn't think I'm good enough. She does think I suck, right? It just reinforced all of those stories. Now, that's my own brain trash, right? Like, that's my own stuff. Again, not her fault, not her, like, job to, like, correct my stuff, or like to navigate my stuff, depending on what we sell. If it's not a high ticket one-on-one and they're group programs or courses, right? We can't go in and have conversations with everyone. Like, this is all my shit and my projections and all of that. So very much taking ownership there. But what I want you to see is, isn't it fascinating to see how my objection was actually me saying I want this, and had there simply been even a slight response to lean into that objection, I probably would have enrolled in the program, because the truth is, I was saying I didn't have all this money, but I had a ton of money sitting in a savings account. Like, I had saved up quite a bit of money. I had the money. I just didn't know if it was okay for me to spend it here, and I needed some handholding through that. Again, I'm going to keep saying, like, not that we're saying she was wrong, like, who knows, maybe it was a fully booked program and that, like, wasn't worth it for her in terms of, like, her hours, all of that. But I want us to see how, isn't that fascinating what that objection was really about? And isn't it fascinating to see what happens when we're so scared to, and I'm not saying she was scared, but, like, when we don't lean into an objection, how we can unintentionally co-sign someone's story. And I think the piece there to see, and this is, we're going to run out of time. I always cram too much into these conversations, but I'll bring this in here in terms of some of the sales secrets I have, or like that I think about, that have helped me to stay fully booked for 5 years and to have a 92.3 plus conversion rate on sales calls. One of the things I just always try to remember is, generally speaking, if someone has a true objection, right? Not, they don't know how to say no and it's a polite no, but a true objection. So often what someone tells you is not the thing it's actually about. This is, I mean, maybe I have an easier time with this because I'm a coach, and I know not everybody here is a coach, and this is very much like what we're doing as a coach. But I know as a coach, anything I'm supporting someone with in business, when someone's telling me they want something in their business and then they're telling me why they can't have that, I pretty much know anything that comes out of someone's mouth is a lie. Not that they are a liar, right? But this is just what our brain does. It just spews the easy, convenient, like the story. It just spews stories. So notice what I said earlier, where I was like, I just needed someone to, with that other coach, I just needed someone to tell me my stories weren't true. Those were all stories. They weren't true, but I was buying those stories. We just love to fight for our stories. And so I know that as a coach. And so I know that with objections. And so one of the easiest things, like bringing this a little bit more into like practical, tactical for how to navigate sales objections, that I always think about is, if someone is giving me a true objection, not a polite no, right? I always want to clear on the two of those. What I don't want to do is try to go to a sales script. What I don't want to do is try to like pull up the sales course to figure out, okay, they said this, what's the thing I'm supposed to say? Because the second I do that, I'm not listening, I'm not paying attention, I'm not paying attention to this human in front of me, right? The secret to overcoming a sales objection is how can I listen to this person in front of me? And how can I listen knowing that there's a very good chance that this is a true sales objection, that whatever they're telling me is a story, but, and here's the key, it is a story that they have fought really hard for a really long time, so they don't know it's a story. They believe it's true, right? If I would have told you all of those things that I was worried about were so real, even though looking back, they're very laughable to me, right? We so believe and buy our own stories. We so think they are gospel and truth. And so when we're navigating an objection with someone, because I think sometimes what happens is when I'm like, that's a fear, that's a lie, that's not true. And I think we have to tread lightly, remembering, and not lightly like you have to tippy toe, like everyone's got a different style and communication style, but I think we have to be mindful that you have a different vantage point from someone speaking to you, so you can often see the forest for the trees for what's going on a little bit differently than someone who's in it, and you're hearing their story for the first time, right, in this isolated situation with all of the expertise and knowledge you have around how well you can support people and results people get and all of that. So it's much easier for you to see something and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cute, that is like such a story or such a fear, and like that's just so not a thing at all. But what I always want to remember is, for the person on the other side, that story is probably a story they have been telling themselves in some shape or form for sometimes decades, right? It just feels so true. And so I want to have compassion for that. And so That's one piece there. And one of the things I always want to do is to make someone, it's sort of like I want a yes and, where it's like, a lot of times there's an element of truth. For example, someone tells me that my coaching is expensive. The last thing I want to be is like, no, you're wrong. That's an objection. That's a fear. It's like, no, my coaching is expensive. Like, that is true. And I want to find out then, but kind of like what's coming up for them around that if they want this thing. Like, what is the thing under the thing? And how can I support someone to start to see that this is more of a story of fear and insecurity, a lack of trust? Like, this is, like, can I just help them to even see that's what's going on? As opposed to it is gospel, it is truth. Because usually what I find is if you can just help someone have that awareness, right, and start to see that alone can do quite a lot for someone to shift their perspective. Because again, remember, if someone has an objection, they already want what it is you're selling, right? They just need to kind of get out of their own story, out of their own way to allow themselves to have what they want and to move towards it. But for that to happen, we have to help them see that the thing they think is telling them they can't have what they want is, you know, is a story, is a fear, is something else. But I find the best way to do that is to help someone come to that on their own, not just like basically yell at someone. And so just remembering that most people will fight for that. And so helping to dissolve that, helping for someone to see it for what it is without making them wrong for that, I think is really important. I'm hoping that makes sense in an explanation. The other piece here that that I will say, I'm just looking at the time here because I had a lot of notes here. I will say, if nothing else, simply being willing to listen and get clear on, is this an objection or a polite no? And if it's an objection, can I be willing to listen, to ask a question, to be curious? I call it lean in, but lean back, meaning can I lean in to have a conversation with someone? Because I find for most, this is a made up stat, but I would guess 85% of people having sales conversations, when there is an objection, unintentionally co-sign the story, peace out, right? Or either just try to like argue, like convince someone as to why that story is not what we were just talking about. Like just try to like argue someone around like why what they're saying is false or true, or get stuck on the surface. Like if someone says it's too expensive, right? I feel like for my clients sometimes they're like, I feel like I'm arguing. And it's like, well, you probably are. And instead of like, your offer is expensive, or to this person that is a lot of money. Like that's not something to argue. Let's stop trying to argue that. Let's get clear on, but what does that mean for them? Like, what's the actual objection? What's the actual thing under the thing? So I think one of the first things is I think most people either get stuck arguing, right? Stuck like trying to solve the surface level thing, or like arguing something that is actually kind of true, or shut down, right? I think so often we're so scared of, I think we're often more scared. We're like scared to sit in the discomfort with someone else. We don't want to be at cause of someone's discomfort. We don't want someone's discomfort, right? Like it just feels easier to be like, well, let me just shut this down. And so I think most people are just unintentionally co-signing someone's story, or just not even willing to hear someone's story. And so if you're willing to just simply, so what I mean is lean into the conversation and just be willing to sit with someone in their own squirminess, discomfort, figuring stuff out. I don't even think it has to be that uncomfortable, but if you can just be willing to do that. And then I say it's lean in, but lean back, meaning can I be willing to lean into the conversation, but lean back in terms of, I'm not, like, of course I want you to work with me, but like my job just isn't to convince you to say yes or no. My job is to figure this out with you. That's what I mean by more lean back, in terms of, not like I'm good either way, but I'm trying to think of how to say this without sounding like an a-hole. I care so deeply about my clients. I care so deeply about the people I have a sales conversation with. If someone is a fit, I want to work with them, and I want them to know that. But the lean back energy is a little bit of like, I'm good either way. Like I'm already good. My business is good. I hope, I would just like to support you. Like in terms of that lean back, where it's like, I don't need you, like, but I would love to support you if you want to come along. And so I think that energy is, I think it feels a lot safer on the other side, because it's a lot less desperate, it's a lot less pushy, it's a lot less like I'm trying to figure out how to get you to pay me money, as opposed to, I would really love to figure out if we can make this work and if I could support you because I really want you here and I think we could do great work together. Can I help you figure that out? Like, what's going on? What's coming up for you? Like, why are you scared? Like, is this the right fit for you? Like, what's your concern? What's your question? Right? They're just such different energies. And so that's what I mean by lean lean in and lean back. But what I find is just simply being willing to have that conversation, and you could literally just ask someone a simple question and nothing else, and to be willing to sit with someone in that discomfort. So often, if someone wants what you're selling, right, and that's why they have an objection, so often they just need the space to be seen, to be heard. Most people will talk themselves in or out of what they actually want. I mean, that's kind of what coaching is all about, right? Most people already know what's true for them. That's my timer that says I have a coaching call in a moment, so I'll make sure that we wrap this up. But most people, right, if we just squeeze the orange, the juice will come out. Most of us just aren't willing to squeeze the orange, or are like strangling it till it's dry. If you do that, that alone will help navigate most objections. It's just most people aren't willing to lean in. Most people aren't willing, or have a hard time leaning back, and most people just aren't willing to sit in that discomfort with another human. I don't actually think it has to be uncomfortable at all, but I think that's the fear that comes up. And so I would say, like, as a sales, like, I know this is like almost like an anti-sales trick, and like everybody wants the like exact thing to say. I always just think, can you say the thing you're thinking, right? Like, that is my sales secret above all sales secrets. I just say what I'm actually thinking. Sure, some of my clients will tell me on the discovery call, they're like, I can't believe you said that, but it's like, it's just like what I was thinking. So that is my like ultimate secret and hack. But just being willing to have that conversation, and remember that someone will convince themselves in or out. You don't have to, like, that isn't your job to, like, your job is to help someone get clear and to make that decision and to create the space for it. And I think if you do that, you take the pressure off yourself and off the other person. And that's also then how you get those yeses with right fit clients, because it's someone who has talked themselves in or talked themselves out, as opposed to you trying to talk them in or out. As soon as you feel like you're arguing with someone in a sales conversation, stop, right? Like, that's when we're no longer, like, then it's about our agenda and about being right, or about convincing, or like getting something, or making the sale, or getting the money. Like, then it's no longer about figuring this out with another human. So I hope that like mindset and perspective helps. The more you can think about this as like, I want to do great work with this human, and they're saying they want that also, but something's coming up. How can I help them figure out what's going on? And how can I figure out how we can do great work together? When you can keep it that simple, right? Like, I think it just takes so much of the, like, oh my gosh, am I being pushy or manipulative or any of that out the window. All right, y'all, this is telling me I gotta go prep for my coaching call. So I hope this is valuable for you. I, of course, have 800 other notes I want to share with you on objections, but we're at almost an hour, so hopefully this has been valuable for you. If you have questions for me that I didn't address, feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you want more support with this, on both my podcasts and my live streams, I have so many free resources. I have a sales course that is only $99 on my website, but I also am opening up my Your Marketing Multiplied Strategy Intensive, and we can take both a marketing focus in order to bring in and book those calls, as well as a sales focus if what you need support with is more the conversion side of things, and how to have those sales conversations, how to create more of those conversions, how to create your sales process that is really well oiled, from bringing in those calls to booking them, to keeping them, to the follow-up process, all of that. I open them up as we go, because I am fully booked, so I only have so much availability, but I am opening up a few for July and August. So I will drop a link for that below. I also have one-on-one spot opening up. So if you're hearing this, you're like, I actually just need help with all of it, and I know I need help with the mindset around sales, and like there's fear coming up, and like leaning in but leaning back, and also the messaging and the marketing, and like I just need to figure out how to bring in consistent revenue. And I'm just noticing there's both the strategy, but it's also some of the ways I think about business. I could probably use some support there. I'll drop a link for a free coaching consultation. I'm excellent at what I do. I'm excellent at holding my clients and supporting them, but also helping you to learn how to think like a CEO, to get out of your own way, and to put in the simple strategy that gives you a process you can rinse and repeat to know how to reliably bring in leads, to close those leads, and to bring in consistent revenue. So I would love to chat with you if that feels like you. Again, I'll drop links for those. I'm gonna hop on my call now, but I'll drop those later, and then I'll see you next week. Got a fun conversation for you next week. I already know what it is, but I'll wait till next week for you to see what that is. I love y'all. Thank you for being here. Bye.